terrifying giant worms that really exist. Worms. Farmers ranch them. Kids get them. Your dog has them. But some worms are so big they have you. I hope you weren't planning on a good night's sleep because you'll never unsee these terrifying giant worms that really exist. Before we introduce our first piece of trauma spaghetti, let's take a trip down memory lane. The year is 1993. A couple in Manassas, Virginia are not in a healthy relationship. Following years of abuse, the wife cut her husband's penis off with a knife. Her name, Lorena Bobbit. Now that you got that image in your head, meet the bobbit worm. The worm, real name Eunice Aphroditeos, gained its nickname in the 1990s thanks to its scissor-like jaws, which sometimes slice fish completely in half. Although if the worm sliced itself in half, it would be more similar to... never mind. Bobbit worms can grow up to 10 feet long and live in burrows on the ocean floor and warm, shallow, coastal waters around the world. So any beach that's good for you is good for bobbit worms. They feel the water above their burrows, waiting for an unsuspecting fish to chance too close. Then they pull them down into the mud, just like those giant worms from the movie Tremors. Bobbit worms occasionally ride along in rocks or coral, which then ends up in saltwater fish tanks. Just a tiny piece of the original worm can grow right back to its full size, disappearing all the fish in the tank one at a time. But that's not how bobbit worms prefer to breed. Normally, the worm's tail grows an eye and swims straight up. All the bobbit worms in the area do their butt-eye maneuver at the same time and swarm the ocean surface. Then they expunge huge clouds of sperm and eggs and die. So if you're out for a swim in the ocean and you see thousands of 10-foot-long bobbit worms wriggling up at you, oh, don't worry. They won't bite. They just want to spooge. Our second wiggly worm can be found in the freezing waters around Antarctica. This happy fellow is Eucalyptica gigantea, but you can just call him the gigantic scale worm. He's just a big version of scale worms that can be found in oceans everywhere. They can usually be found fumbling around in debris on the ocean floor, near rocks, or flailing helplessly in the water column. Although you're probably thinking, nah, this thing is no scarier than a horseshoe crab or jellyfish. Just wait, you haven't seen it eat yet. Folded up in the business end of this marine annelid is a pair of jumpy, grabby jaws. Kinda like this guy. But to see them, we'll have to take off his clothes. There we go. As you can see, the gigantic scale worm is quite wormy indeed. What with its nodules and chitty. And that thing at the front there is its grabby, bitey mouth. At this point, you have our permission to say nope, and go spray your eyes with chlorine if you'd rather unsee that thing. We'll wait. For everyone who stuck around, here's some more photos of this alien from the frozen deep, set to soothing, royalty-free music. For our next wriggling ropey thing, we have this, a wriggly ropey thing. Although it might look like a pile of discarded intestines, this is actually an Antarctic proboscis worm. It's found all over the southern oceans. It can live near shore or down to almost 12,000 feet below the surface. It's related to the bootlace worm, which can grow to 160 feet long. But the Antarctic proboscis worm only grows to about 7 feet long, so don't freak out. It will, however, eat pretty much anything it can get its proboscis into. That would be starfish, jellyfish, anemones, or sponges. But this slow scavenger's favorite meal is definitely dead bodies. Dead bodies are also the right speed for proboscis worms, as they're pretty slow movers. Here, a dead seal is set upon by an unruly mob of worms and sea stars. Underwater, dead things don't decompose like they would on land, especially in near-freezing water. The proboscis worms take up the slack by using their proboscises, which is really more like a sticky harpoon, to jam through the seal's skin. Although the eye sockets are clearly the path of least resistance. Proboscis worms can sometimes group together in pretty large numbers. If you get the impulse to visit Signey Island in the South Orkney Islands of Antarctica, you'll find up to 26 proboscis worms in every square yard. For our fourth and final worm of your bad dreams, we're visiting the velvet underground, because that's where we'll find the velvet worm. Although when I said underground, what I really meant was extremely humid tropical forest environments. About 200 species have been discovered so far, and they range in size from 1/5 of an inch up to 8 inches. Although these crazy little creatures could almost be considered cute, you'll see in a moment that they have more in common with a hungry alien invader. Velvet worms wriggled onto land at least 430 million years ago. Although they look like a centipede with their stubby little legs, they are definitely worms. Those legs are actually just bumps on their body they've learned to walk around on. But by far the freakiest feature of this creature is the way it eats. Velvet worms ambush their prey by softly tiptoeing up close. Then they let rip with a torrent of sticky slime. Once the prey is stuck, the velvet worm uses its hidden jaw to slice open a joint, inject acid, and waits for its prey to dissolve from the inside out.
Yummy.
That's all the wormy action we've got time for today, folks. Oh, by the way, if you want to see more of the carnivorous bobbit worm, just look right behind you. Ha, made you look.